Hello, and welcome to this episode of Security Square, our cybersecurity focused series featuring analyst insights, expert guests, and the latest news and happenings across the security sector. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, principal analyst here at Kramer&Co Research. I'm joined today by my frequent co-host and collaborator, Jo Peterson, fellow analyst, brilliant engineer, member of the CUBE Collective community of independent analysts. And our conversation today is centered on data warehouses and securing them. We are joined by today. I'm going to start over. Look, I already goofed up. Can you make a sound?
I'm so easily amused.
I like it. Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to just start over. I have to swallow. Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Security Angle. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Managing Director and Principal Analyst here at the CUBE Research. I am joined today by my frequent co-host and collaborator, Jo Peterson, fellow analyst, brilliant engineer, member of the CUBE Collective community of independent analysts, for a conversation about data warehouses and securing them. And we are joined today by the illustrious, world-famous Billy Spears, CISO at Teradata. Billy, welcome.
Hey everyone, thanks for inviting me here. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is still Billy Spears, and I'm so glad to be here with both of you.
This is going to be a treat, viewers and listeners. Billy never comes unprepared, so I love it. All right, to set the stage here a little bit, we're going to take a walk down memory lane. The concept of data warehouses originated in the 1980s. Oh my God, that's a long time ago, and I'm really old. IBM researchers Barry Devlin and Paul Murphy developed the business data warehouse to help data flow from operational systems into decision support systems. Bill Inman, an American computer scientist and someone largely considered the father of the data warehouse, defined a data warehouse as a collection of data that supports the decision of management. Inman wrote the first book, held the first conference, and offered the first classes to teach the industry about data warehouses. Kind of cool, isn't it? I think it is anyway, but I'm a geek. Early data warehouses were large-scale systems used to report and analyze data, and of course, they were primarily on-prem. Of course they were. They required a lot of redundancy because most organizations had multiple DSS environments for different users. Today, the average size of a modern data warehouse is over 100 terabytes. For comparison purposes, Walmart achieved the first 1 terabyte data warehouse in 1991, also a very long time ago. Data warehouses store data from a variety of sources, including customer information, product information, employee-related personnel information, sales records, invoices, you name it, they're in our data warehouses. They are designed to support business decision-making through data collection, consolidation, analytics, and of course, research. We've seen data warehouses, evolve into variations. We've got the data lakehouse, we've got the data cube, we've got data silos, and we've got data swamps. And all of these repositories have in common, what they have in common besides data is the need for security, which leads us to you, Billy. And it sets the stage for our conversation today about securing the data warehouse. We are so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm very, very excited.
You notice how I paused there to let you just, bring your noises. So here I am, teeing you up. So before we dive in more fully, Billy, you're a busy guy. You are on the CNBC Tech Executive Council. You're a venture advisor for Avenir, a product advisory. You're on the product advisory board for Palo Alto Networks. You're a cybersecurity board advisor for Cybertar, and chances are good I missed a few in there. All this advisory work is work you do in addition to your role as a CISO at Teradata, which is wildly impressive. So now that we know you're an overachiever, walk us a little bit, if you would, through your career journey. We'd love to know a little bit more about your backstory.
Yeah, it's awesome, Shelly. I think it's a record. If you ever heard of a DJ and they sort of stop. But the idea here is I'm like an innovator. I love technology, and I love the value of what technology can do to drive efficiency and operational outcomes for companies. So whether it's from the CISO perspective with all the risks and the controls and the things, whether it's developing new technology for companies to really harness that value to their customers, or whether it's driving something that's sellable to the mass market, all of that stuff is incredible because it starts with data or it aligns with technology. And for me, that just gets me really, really excited. So if you look at sort of my career trajectory, I started as a software developer a very, very long time ago. And then from there, I've sort of progressed in different places in my career. And most of those journeys, if you really look at them, it's all been about innovation on how we can drive the outcome. Most of that is through the lens of security. I love security because, as most of your audience will know, you get to sort of break things apart, figure out what's going wrong, and then put it back together better than how it started in the first place. I also love designing solutions that have this impact with customers before they even know they need to resolve something. And I like to think security professionals are there behind the scenes for you, stressing out, staying awake. So A, you get a good sleep at night, and we make sure that all the things are working appropriately, so you don't have to worry about those things inside of either your company, your university, your technology that maybe you're investing in, or the product that you're developing. So all of that can be very, very useful if you have the right consultation at your side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Security is the foundation for everything, really. I mean, in my world, in my sort of nerdy brain, and really, you talked about all these different things, but security is important for our personal lives as well, and all of the data breaches that happen and all of those sort of things, that the people who are often affected the most are ordinary average people like the three of us. Although there's nothing really average about you two, but I'm pretty average. So there you go.
Well, it is average. It's just a really long word. I like to use a different A word, which is awesome. That's sort of
okay.
So if this was like Sesame Street, we would say keyword awesome with 1, 2, 3 of my favorite friends talking to an unlimited audience outside. I think what's cool about security has been post-COVID, because the idea of the traditional network barrier was inside your company before, and that's extended to your house. So another key nugget for all of your listeners, and I know, Jo, you can compliment here, is remember to change your Wi-Fi password. Remember to be careful what's on your home network, because you almost become the help desk inside of your household. So you got to be careful who you let in, what they're doing on your network, and how that traverses all those smart devices that you have in your home. Because another key lesson is we spend $10 to $12 billion in an industry focused on people security.
Yeah.
But if we go backwards a little bit, we think about how many actors are actually on your networks. I know everyone at home is coming up with all these numbers, and if I had thought bubbles that could pop out of my head, I'm sure we would have random numbers everywhere. But the idea is there's two, right? There's two actors on every network. There's people, that's the easy one, and there's machines. We focus on the people. We forget about all the machines. We just want to be smarter. We want to have AI. We want to have all this stuff to interact with us. But you got to remember, those things, those machines that you're connecting, also have risks, and we have to consider those risks even through the fog of innovation.
Well, and Jo and I actually just had a conversation about this on an earlier episode. But for all that's holy, from a personal standpoint, you have to do things like taking that router out of the box and installing it, and not using the default password, and changing your Wi-Fi password on a regular basis, setting up a guest network. And so there's so many things that are important when it comes to keeping safe. But I digressed. I want to laser back in on data warehouse security. So Billy, walk us through a little bit of what's involved here in this realm of data warehouse security.
It's an explosion question, right? Because you so eloquently kind of described what a data warehouse was. So for all the listeners that don't know, go get one. I happen to know a company that has an amazing one. Our parallel architecture and our processing is second to none, especially with the larger workloads. Shameless plug, but always available for your needs. When we think about the security of those warehouses, it involves a traditional CIA triad. And if those of you don't know, that's confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but mostly around the data stored within the warehouse. Because again, we don't know what data you're putting in. We just assume it's high value data that you want to continually gain insights from. So given that these warehouses aggregate massive amounts of potentially sensitive information from various sources, whatever you want to bring in, they can be a prime target for cyber attacks. Some common security concerns in this space include things like unauthorized access. We saw that a little bit this summer, right? Where a large data warehouse was known, and they published a potentially great product, and folks, the customers, didn't then take that product and embed the security that they need to on their side, and it caused a little bit of consternation and caused a little bit of unauthorized access and some more severe consequences. Things like the larger construct of data breaches. In my business, the B word is a tough word to get around because you have so much event, so many logs to consider, but there are so many other people that are curious, right? It goes back to the very start of remember, we have TCP and then we added IP on top of it. And the idea is we wanted to have some security around natural transmissions between universities and the government, believe it or not. Yeah. Those of you don't know what I'm talking about, I give you some homework right there in a subtle way. Going back to data warehouses, the idea is think about your insider threats. I could put as much security in your warehouse as you want, but if you simply are super polite, like a concierge, and you walk them past the security, we're in big trouble. So make sure your insiders know that if you want us to recognize them, put chairs over their head and walk out of the building, and we'll know exactly who they are, and we'll go stop them and ask for appropriate controls. Data leakage. This is your accidental sort of spillover of things. Sometimes with best intent and curiosity, data tends to leak out. So you want to have those A to Z sort of security controls in place. So if something like that happens, a simple rule or an event sort of alert, you might call, fires off to you and lets you know. So you can come there like a great handyman, and we can help plug that hole or fix it by remediating that security. And then lastly, you always have vulnerabilities, and they come from all kinds of different places. But in this particular context, we're talking about vulnerabilities in the underlying infrastructure. Super important. And then I think the other couple of things I would add on is poor identity management and inadequate encryption of data, of both data at rest and in transit, also pose significant risk to the integrity and security of the warehouse as a whole. So those are lots of things wrapped into a nice bow. Back to you, Shelly. And Jo, if you want to add on, please do.
Lots of security concerns. Absolutely. You checked a lot of the boxes.
Thanks. I try. There was a lot in a condensed format. I think the idea around what you do with the warehouse. Remember, this is for companies. This is your most significant data, right? And it probably has the largest grouping or sampling of the data in your company. So it's really important to not forget about the A to Z of security, because if you miss one thing, it can definitely have a cascading effect on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jo, I think that you wanted to talk a little bit about some security.
Yep, I did. Billy, you teased on a couple of the things when you answered Shelly's questions, but I wonder if you could dig in a little bit more. You mentioned 3 that perked my ears: identity and access management, right? Who's coming in and what permissions do they have? Encryption of traffic, and that's, in flight and at rest. So, and any others that you want to add. So could you sort of, double click on some of those a little bit and talk to people about what they need to think about when they're building that data warehouse?
Yeah, fair question. Thanks for the follow-up there, Jo. Let's start with encryption, because I think when people think about encryption, they simply say, hey, here's an encryption, here's an encryption standard, I'm going to follow that standard and I'm good to go. And they forget about there's lots of ways to get into the source of the data. There's lots of ways to be maybe a trusted insider into that information, and there's lots of ways to extract that data out. So for as a high level, what I tell people, it's really important to encrypt all your data, period, both at rest, in transit. And really what you're trying to do is mitigate the risk of things like interception or unauthorized access, which kind of leads into the next part of that, Jo. When we talk about identity and access control, again, this is the people side of the equation, right? So we want to make sure that there's not just ways to get in or multi-factor authentication included on the outside, but you also want to have role-based access applied here. You don't want everybody that gets in to have access to all the rows or all the columns of your data. They only need to have access to whatever they need. And I would employ everybody to adopt the principle of least privilege to ensure only the authorized users have access to the specific data based on their roles or the permissions that you'd like to allocate. And remember, there's lots of other people inside of your data warehouse. There might be service providers. So you pay people to maintain your database, or you pay people to maintain your technology. Again, you're going to want to assign them roles too. You don't want to just give them global admin, because they'll have the keys to your kingdom, which kind of bypasses, or it kind of precludes the security that you've put around that data warehouse. And then the last thing, I forgot the last part of your question, Joe. I think it was around maybe monitoring. I can't remember. Sorry.
No, I didn't ask that, but you can go there, and then I want to circle back to something that you talked about as it relates to RBAC.
Yeah, totally fair. I think if I just go down the thought of monitoring for a second, I think it's a natural place where my brain goes next. It's important also, once you have this stuff hooked in, you continuously monitor these activities, things like data access, system events. And I would encourage folks to implement logging and auditing that detect anomalous or unauthorized access much earlier. You can either ingest this into your SIM or a different logging system of your choosing, but not just the logs, but also the people. Who are the privileged users in those accounts? Who are those privileged users? What are they doing? So if you make a change and it corrupts your data or something, you can roll it back, or you understand what that defined moment was so you can recover much quicker. Because resiliency is key, especially in these large data warehouses. You have to be able to fail over very quickly. Most people are dependent on maintaining the 4 or 5 nines of uptime, like my company provides. Just a shameless plug again. But the idea here, it's really, really important that if something happens, or you feel like there's something strong enough where you have to go back to something else, you can fail over to alternative workloads.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I want to stay there a minute, because I think people get tripped up and think it's overlap sometimes when we talk about things like role-based access control, least privilege, encryption, and then we layer on something like zero trust network access. So I wanted to get your opinion on the value of zero trust network access as it relates to folks coming into a data warehouse.
Yeah, well, I think it's the concept of zero trust is not to trust anyone and validate each layer of authentication, just to kind of back up. So I think that's true. I mean, if you were at a bank and you said, here's my crown jewels in the vault, right now, let's call that a Lego, because that's just how my brain thinks, everybody. So if you have this really important golden Lego sitting in your vault, how many layers of security do you have getting from the street to the vault? Great. That's traditional security. But what the cloud has done is they've bypassed most of those layers. So it's not like they go in and there's a checkpoint between the door and the teller to the manager, and the manager to whoever manages the vault. And then you finally get into the vault and there's 2 keys you turn simultaneously, and then great things happen with that golden Lego. Now you can get from the street, you can dial into some virtualized infrastructure, and you're right into that vault. So I think when you think about zero trust as it comes to a data warehouse, it's even more important, because you want to make sure, again, the right people have access to the right information at the right times and nothing else. This is not bathroom reading fodder. This is not just, I'm interested in knowing who did ... This is critical information for not only your company, but also the industry as a whole. Like, for example, if you're in a bank or a big healthcare environment, you might have data on patients or whoever's doing business with your institution. This might be their personal bank accounts, their investments, their corporate accounts. In the cases of healthcare, you might be talking about critical illnesses. You might be talking about prognosis, diagnosis. You might be talking about, sub-illnesses or something that affects you, medication, whatever. These are all really important things that people want to keep in the sort of private sphere. You don't want those things to leak out. So from a data warehousing standpoint, we want to give you all of the robust security measures so you can take advantage of them. And even if you don't take advantage of them, as I know I can speak for Teradata, we want to enforce as many of those as possible to make sure you have as much rigidity as possible inside of your security approach as you can. And I know we're always looking for ways to mature our security footprint, not only for us as a company, but also that of our customers. And we have a great story there over the last few years. Another shameless plug. Check us out.
Well, and I think too, to pop in here, it's really important to understand there's business data, there's customer data, there's employee data, and so I know sometimes that, just in the normal course of doing our jobs, you might be irritated by certain MFA steps or other policies and procedures that our organizations put in place. But the reality of it is organizations are truly treasure troves of this vast amount of PII, personally identifiable information. So when you look at from an employee standpoint, you've got your name, your social security number, your address, your date of birth, your phone number, think about what access to that kind of information might be. And then maybe step back and let's give our cybersecurity teams a pass sometimes on, the annoyances that come along when, we have to maybe do what we feel like is jumping through hoops to stay safe. But I think that's an important part of the equation here.
I totally agree, Shelly. And I think if I can recap on the two parts of the question, Jo asked, the principle of least privilege, the concept of using that reduces the attack surface, right?
Yeah.
That's really important. Attack surface by minimizing things like the number of potential entry points for unauthorized access.
Right.
It also ensures that things like users, systems, and applications only have access to the data they need to perform their tasks.
Right.
Nothing more, folks. Like, let's not be super excitable there. And then I think zero trust, the key word there is we want to assume that no one inside or outside, that's my crazy explanation of the bank vault, outside of the network can be trusted by default.
Yeah.
Every request needs to be verified and authenticated based on context. And the context in this case might be user identity, location, device health, et cetera. And we want to enforce things like granular real-time access control. Again, by adopting these things in a data warehousing environment, not only my company, but yours too, can ensure that even if an attacker gains network access, they won't be able to move laterally and compromise the sensitive data inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like something that you said about the fact that we forget that some of these systems are cloud-based and they bypass things, right? And so my next question that I've got for you is, let's face it, many of us are still in a hybrid world, right? Many organizations, for whatever reason, and they're varied and sundry, sit in a hybrid environment. And they've got data on-prem, maybe like in a colo, and then they've got some stored in the cloud. And what I think about, and I'd really like to get your take on, is if your data has to transit these two environments, what are a couple of the non-negotiable security practices that organizations really should have in place?
Yeah, great question. I think that kind of brings you pause, because you think as a security professional, you have all these things at your ready, and you're like, what two things? So you kind of put me in a box there. So if I had to think two things in a data warehouse, so thank you for the trick question, Jo. And all of you listening, please don't judge me. She said two, so I'm going to choose two.
I mean, you know what? If you need to, you're a hard guy to pin down, bro. But if you need to go to three, we'll let you.
Well, 3 is a better prime number, but we'll stick with 2 for now and see where it goes from there. I love that, Shelly. Thank you for giving me a phone a friend. That's awesome. So the idea here is I would start with end-to-end encryption. Number one, we want to ensure that the data is encrypted, again, both in transit and at rest, using the most up-to-date or modern encryption algorithm. So again, just because you think it's encrypted, if you're using a legacy algorithm, it's probably not that great, and you should think about really leveling yourself up like Teradata does. Again, another shameless plug. If there was a bunch of those, we should have an image like the Teradata.
Wow, that pops up every time.
We said it again.
And then those encryptions prevent things like interception and tampering during the data transit process between on-prem and cloud environments. And if you have a really good hybrid data warehouse, or the best hybrid trusted AI data warehouse on the planet like Teradata, then we do that stuff, and you know that. If not, let us know and we'll show you. It's great. The second is
Teradata.
Okay. It is, but it's like a small T with a dot, because the dot really matters, Jo. Not just to us, but also our customers.
Right.
Super important. And then when you think about the next, I think about securing network connection. So first, end-to-end encryption. Second, securing network connection. Use secure protocols, such as things like TLS or SSL or IPsec for transferring data between environments.
Yeah.
Additionally, implementing things like virtual private networks, or in the biz, we call it VPNs, or dedicated private network connections like AWS Direct Connect or Azure Express Route, that can further secure this transit path. Those two things can really, really help you out, especially in the colo environment.
I like it. I like it. We can't have any conversation today without talking about AI. So we don't want to break, we don't want to break the mold here. But as we know, AI is becoming more of a hot topic in the security sector, and with good reason. So talk with us a little bit about your thoughts on how utilizing AI as it relates to security and access control in a data warehouse environment can make a difference.
Yeah, AI is interesting. When you think about traditional AI, which we've used for decades, and then you think about generative AI, right? So when you think about traditional AI, it helps you understand the data that you have. And then Gen AI creates new data. Super high level. So for all of you folks looking up Wiki or your thesaurus, yes, I left out a lot of words, but that's basically gives the audience a basic general understanding. So when I think about the ways that AI can help as it relates to security in the data warehouse environment, I think number one, anomaly detection. AI-driven security can analyze vast amounts of data, and in a data warehouse, that's what you have. You have ridiculously large amounts of data sets, so it can detect things like unusual patterns of behavior in real time. It can predict like speed to understanding that very quickly, because it can consume way more than a human can. It can understand exactly what's right and wrong. It can ingest things like your threat feeds and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. User, here's some situation you might want to look at. I think the identifying things like irregular access patterns or potential insider threats, human administrators might miss that on large volumes, but the technology just won't. And then when I think about the second part, which is the dynamic access control, now this is critical. AI can enhance access control systems by continuously assessing risk levels associated with access requests. Based on real-time analysis, or at least near real-time analysis, AI is able to adjust access rights dynamically. Think about what I just said there, folks at home. I mean, this is a nugget dropper, right? It's like, again, I should just do that. That's super important. Can't have enough air horn today when we're talking about security, right? Again, it's about adjusting the access rights dynamically, ensuring that users only have access under safe conditions. These are two things I think are really important, and I love the themes of two here.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about a thorny topic: balancing the need to have cost-effective ways to protect these different categories of data in accordance with the varying degrees of protection they require. That's no small task in and of itself, but there's a balancing act that's required here. So I think it's safe to say that an organization doesn't want to spend $100 million on data security solutions when estimated losses from a data compromise might run in the neighborhood of 5 million. So as a CISO, how do you balance these, the balance of risk versus cost?
Yeah, this feels like one of those game shows where you got like door number one or door number two. So before I do that, I like to use my child. Right? And so now we can kind of talk about the money conversation. I think balancing risk and investment is crucial or critical even in any security strategy.
Sure.
Right? As a CISO, I tend to emphasize the importance of things like data classification as a foundational step. So we have to put a value on our data throughout the life cycle. Not all data is treated equally. Not all data has the same value. For example, things that you release publicly. Would you spend a tremendous amount of money protecting that, or putting controls around that, or preventing that from hitting the street? No, you're releasing it anyway. But maybe your corporate IT, how you compile your code, what the recipe is for inside that code, those kinds of things. You'd probably put a lot more protection around that because it's much more critical to the success of your business, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of data classification for me is important. But even with that, I think the things like also your financial information of your customer, it warrants stronger protections. So things like, again, we've talked a lot about encryption or advanced access controls. Sometimes less sensitive measures, you may not want to encrypt end to end, the public information, the general notes that are happening in between meetings. While that might be confidential and doesn't hit the street, that still doesn't rise to the specificity or cost restraints of all the other security mechanisms that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I think by categorizing your data based on sensitivity and maybe business value, you can allocate security resources proportionally. So if you think about all the I's, PII, IP, PHI, whatever, that's the stuff that you really want to care about, high valued information.
Right.
General conversation, maybe not so much, especially if it's Billy rambling all the time. You're like, nah, that's not necessary. We're not going to spend the money there. And then when I think about risk-based security, which is kind of how I opened, I think the potential financial impact of things like data compromise or a breach, right, changes the level of investment in the security measures themselves. Leveraging cloud-based security solutions or managed security services can offer an offset of cost-efficient or scalable protections without overburdening your overall technical investment spend. And for me, the ultimate goal is to ensure that security spending is justified by the potential risk. I think security leaders, we can forget about it. Even me, I get excited sometimes with the technical innovation, and I forget about this is a risk-based thing, and we need, as security leaders, we need to manage into the risk tolerance, not necessarily manage all risk or drive down every bit of risk in your company, because sometimes that's not quite as cost effective in the protection strategy, and it becomes an overinvestment in areas that don't pose significant risks.
I think to me, one of the things that I see happening over the course of just over the last handful of years is the evolution of the CISO role. And, much of what you've centered on here is business talk, understanding business risk, and the role that plays in developing business strategies. This is not just a security issue. This is a business issue. And so, the evolution of the CISO role and being able to be a part of conversations at the highest levels within the organization, on the board level, as I mentioned early on in the intro, you're on many advisory boards. I think that's such an important evolution of this role, and the role that we're seeing CISOs play within organizations has grown so much. And to me, it would be exciting if that was my job.
I couldn't be excited more. I know, Jo, you've been in this business a long time too. I think the involvement from traditional pulling network cables to driving maybe even control-based sort of risks into what we are today. I think we're great advisors across the business, and if you're in a place in a business where you're like, I don't really need a CISO, those people kind of kill my sunshine on a cloudy day, and the reality is that's not true. I think that CISOs, if used correctly, these are the fast path folks in your organization. These are the HOV lane of how to get things done, because they understand the risk and they can help you evolve solutions that really drive innovation into your company. Because really, if you think about the friction you have with security, that means something is causing that friction. Right. It looks like a denial of service attack. It looks like some anomalous behavior. So some control is working as designed. But you, the user, are like, I keep hitting enter and nothing's happening. Like, this is terrible. Forget security. And turning security off is never the option, right? So you want to make sure that it's working correctly. You're strategically aligned with your business objectives. Your security leaders should think about the fundamental concept of why you're in business. I know I'm going to say something totally taboo. Welcome to Billy Spears being a guest on your show. Listen, your business is in business to make money. Yep. Let's just put the emphasis there. And your job as a security leader is to help them do that securely by safeguarding the digital assets throughout your environment. If there's any other rhyme or reason, give me a call. I'll help you out and get you centered. We can call my friend Jo, my other friend Shelly, and we can get you centered right. So you'll feel good, you'll be safe, and we'll continue moving in the right direction.
And your days will be filled. Your days will be filled with sunshine.
I feel like there's a T-shirt here, right?
I love it. I love it.
Love security, kill my sunshine. But
I love your analogy of CISOs being like the HOV lane. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think we do. In many instances, we think about our cybersecurity teams as blockers, getting in the way of my forward progress. And the reality of it is you're my guardian angel. And I think that's an important way to view the role.
Another T-shirt.
Go ahead, Jo.
Another T-shirt, my guardian angel.
Yeah.
That's right. Have you ever heard folks talk about security? You get in a room and they're like, security, and they're like, security is a team of no. Well, I don't think so. I think security is a team of whoa, let's get this done. And
Yeah.
we're a yes if society, right? We
Yeah.
want to help you get to wherever you want to be. We just want to do it a little safer. So if you have MFA, if you have privileged access, if you're using encryption, and if you don't know how to do those things, you should talk to your security teams. They're stacked full of architects and engineers and operations folks they do this day in and day out. They don't just sound like C3PO. They actually help you develop quality solutions. They help you get to the end result a whole lot faster. They think about the things that you don't think. A, so you don't have to. B, so your customer can start to develop more trust and confidence in the product that you're putting on the street, like we do at Teradata. So give us a call.
Well, I've got one more question for you, Billy. You know, I think we may have missed some things in this conversation, right?
You know, Jo can barely even talk right now because you are cracking her up so much. So I just want you to know, well done on making my gal lose her composure.
Anything we missed, Billy? That's my question.
I think the only thing that should be, and again, we're not really influencing the outcome, but if you really want a differentiated model, you got to look at the strength of the parallel architecture in these data warehouses, and look for your trusted hybrid AI solution when it comes to this stuff. And of course, I'm talking about Teradata. Teradata has been around 45 years. We started on-prem. We worked through the hybrid model. We are in the cloud. We can help you solve these things a lot faster. If you want to know about security, oh my gosh, my head's going to explode. We can get end-to-end rows talking in so much security that your head spins frontwards and backwards and up and down. And we have spent a tremendous amount of time, especially in this space, really leveling up our security, going from an on-prem model to a cloud-native model, which gives you much more versatility. If you think about CNAP, that's another crazy acronym, and probably a whole nother show, shameless plug for myself, to join these two ladies again. But when you talk about it, we've spent a tremendous amount of investment getting there a lot faster. So the idea is we have the cloud-native application protection platform in place. It's working. It's really cool. More importantly, even if you're not interested in our product and you want to check it out, give us a call. I'd love to kind of take you a walk through sort of the strategy behind it and why we designed what we designed and how we did it. And the idea here is it's not really about what Teradata has done. It's more about sharing the knowledge that we've learned along the journey with everybody else. So maybe, just maybe, you can take one less Excedrin and bump your head in one less place than I did. That's why my head's shaped kind of oblong instead of the natural way it should be. But the idea here is we've learned a lot. We're so very proud of the result. I couldn't be prouder of the team, and I'm thankful for you guys inviting me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, we are so glad to have you. And I think, you know, I hate to actually, I was going to say I hate to go out on a limb, but that's a lie. I go out on limbs all the time. I think that you have nabbed the award for the most entertaining, most fun guest that we've had. And we've done a lot of interviews, Billy Spears. So thank you for bringing it today.
Thank you. I think it deserves an applause, not from me, but for both of you. I'm really appreciative. But I do need to say one thing going out. None of this actually is possible in my journey without the tremendous amount of people behind the scenes that have helped.
Absolutely.
At Teradata, while I get the great opportunity to be in front of all of you, there's so many people on my team across the organization that really made our transformation happen over the last 2.5 years or so. So I can't thank them enough. Hopefully they're all listening and they're cheering at their house right now. It's amazing. So thank you all from me to you. And again, for you, Shelly and Jo, for inviting me on and getting to tell a little bit of our journey and talking about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. This has been amazing.
It has been amazing. So Billy Spears, CISO at Teradata, thank you so much for joining us today for our conversation about data warehouse security strategies. You have shared some great information, as we knew that you would. You brought the fun as well. And we always enjoy these conversations. We so appreciate you making time to hop on with us today. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Security Square. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer&Co. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hit that subscribe button if you've not yet done it, and we'll see you here next time.